What does disproportionality mean to me in special education? I think disproportionality means in special education that percentile ratio representing a race or identification is affected by bias, lack of resources, and less student achievement of those marginalized. I found a video of Larry Simpson from the Overview of Disproportionality defining it as a nationwide issue affecting race and identification for eligibility in special education. Simpson makes some points like a striking number of students with disabilities get suspensions and expulsions. He also has data that shows 50% of African American students in special ed are often in there because of a data of showing them being cognitively impaired. The percentile ratio introduces us to a bias and disproportion among race and special education students that connected with how I define disproportionality in special ed. So, what is the problem? Why is it a problem? Well, educators assess or by finding, meaning discovering, a child's neurological factors. However, there isn't support providing the student with a neurological disability the right resources for them to achieve. We have data that shows race, ethnicity, and type of disability of Hispanic students with disabilities at a growing number. The most common ones and the highest ones are specific learning disability, hearing impairment, speech and language disability, and orthopedic disability. We also have in another data of disability type for school year 2014-2015, African American students are underdiagnosed from different categories like different learning disabilities, language impairment, health impairment, social emotional impairments, and support, and so on. What is the cause of it though? Well, educators often ignore the needs of students with neurological struggles because maybe they don't know how to support their students, or it's just looked frowned upon. And that leads to the students' low academic achievement. There's also a lot of focus on student intelligence or assessments rather than giving the right resources and equity of providing all students to achieve at their level. And that's why EL students are not getting the practical tools. Nothing's helping them advance. And they're stigmatized of not being intellectual or having a disability because they don't understand or they are not reading something right. Because, once again, they're not provided with resources. There isn't a lot of translators or people that can be there for them. And also, we see bias towards specific groups. African American children are often systematically targeted and often receive less support from educators, whether it's academics or special ed, and often get expulsions or suspensions, much more than white students would or Asian students would. Now, what is the population of students that is affected? Well, in one of the data that the video mentioned is that cultural background really has to do with a lot about the effects of students getting marginalized or not getting the proper resources. And the reason for that is sometimes educators don't know how to support, and there's communication barriers amongst this. We also see that African American students still also get negatively impacted because of bias, because of the systematic way of how education is approached and the societal norms. And we also have special education students that are either labeled to be represented as something and not often supported with that. So how can we prevent overrepresentation in special ed? Well, cultural diverse teaching helps. If we allow students to grow and acquire new skills in meaningful contexts, this will benefit teachers to have an engaging and a fun classroom with kids learning about their experiences, giving teachers insight on the experiences, and giving students opportunity to find their identity in their learning. Another way is enhancing student strengths. We want to effectively get all the students to build different areas of strengths and weaknesses. So, like a perfect example that I found from an article is the schema strategy. So if we want to help EL students to learn vocabulary, for example, you can use this kind of strategy to learn a foreign language by connecting it to the native language. And then there will be that connection to similarity among that vocabulary word. Number 3 would be creating new goals with the support of this district. So educators want disproportionality to be reduced. So in order to have that change, we advocate for special ed students and facilitate a plan with general ed staff, extra service staff, and the administrators to ensure student achievement. Number 4 would be accuracy in evaluation and extra aid assessor. Evaluating a student is tricky, so if we have a benchmark and an aid to help evaluate and assess carefully and look at these evaluations carefully, we would ensure appropriate intervention and reasons to have special education resources for that child. Lastly, promoting family involvement. This strategy is one of the most effective ways educators could interact and gain insight from families and students' needs and ways to support students effectively. This also gives families more input on their child's education and feel welcomed and cared by their involvement. It's also another way that teachers can understand different family backgrounds and their culture and to find ways to communicate with them effectively. This is the end of my video, and the references are added. Thank you.